Welcome back, everyone, to the Fly Culture Podcast. I hope you're all very, very well. Had one of those good days today, a good breakfast, fishing talk, and then some fly casting. My guest today is my good friend, Luke Kozak. Luke, it's great to have you along. That was a pretty good start to the day, wasn't it?
It was an unbelievably good start to the day. So, it's nice to arrange a meeting between us. It's not often it happens, but fortunately we've seen each other a few times recently, but it was lovely to sit down and chat fishing and life and have a cup of coffee and a good breakfast. So, yeah.
I enjoy those aspects of it, and it's part of that process of the new year, the new season just around the corner now, and we're just starting to get the excitement dial. Is it okay to turn it up a few notches?
Definitely. The excitement dial is already turned up in my camp. Looking forward to the BFFI this weekend. I'm going to be there. Looking forward to catching up with various folks. Going to stock up on a few materials. I'm tying flies when I can at the moment, getting ready for various forays around the country. And I'm really excited. Always this time of year, I'm excited to get out on the river and stretch my legs, stretch my arms, and cast the line. So yeah, can't wait.
And it was fun doing a bit of casting as well, wasn't it?
It was, and that was something that we talked about on the phone. Was that I just wanted to iron out a few things with my casting, and you, the eminent caster and instructor that you are, you're shrugging a bit, but I know you're a great caster. I've always I'm blowing smoke a bit now, but you deserve it. You're a great caster, Pete, and it was nice to have your eye on what I was doing. So we ironed out a few things there, and it's good to just have that time before you actually get on the river to practice and get ready.
You make a really interesting point there as well, because coming into the new season, it's easy to overlook the casting aspect of our game. And particularly, and I've been doing it out, I put on my socials a little while back, 2 or 3 weeks ago, that I was out practicing my casting and throwing some casts, and my cat was chasing the line down, which was really, really good fun. But when you're doing it on your own, it's slightly different. And I remember my friend Lee Cummings used to say you can get lonely caster syndrome, that you sort of do the same sort of things. But when you're enjoying this in good company, then you analyse things in a slightly different way rather than doing the tired routine. And it might be something worth listeners thinking about as well, that if you've got a fishing buddy, that just spending half an hour, perhaps even having a coffee or a breakfast, and then finding a field somewhere or other and doing a little bit of casting is a great way to bring you back into the season. And I know for myself that I've not really fished in any meaningful way since November, because the rivers have been consistently against me, and I've been busy with some other things as well. But it's kind of fun, isn't it? Spending time throwing a few lines with people, talking about what you're doing, how you're doing it. It definitely helps that way, doesn't it?
Yeah. Having somebody else's perspective, particularly someone with that kind of instruction experience like you, is extremely helpful, and it picks out those little things. You can, like you say, you can be quite monotonous, you can be quite repetitive with your casting, and actually it takes someone else's to just stand back and have a look, and you can pick out those little areas. We were working today, weren't we, on just the drift on the back cast, and where my left hand was in relation to my right hand on the double haul. And we found actually, and hands up, I'll admit this, my one of my flaws was actually I was trying to overpower the rod on the way forwards, and what was happening was the cast was landing short and collapsing much sooner than it should, and also it was causing a tailing loop. So we looked at that, and sure enough, it was like magic. Once you pointed it out, it suddenly, the rod felt different, the line felt different, and then I just felt instantly it all felt better. So, yeah, cheers for that.
Yeah, you're
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
You're welcome. And the fascinating thing about this is that I've been thinking about it for a little while, and flirting with the idea of a little bit of casting instruction now and coming back to that a little bit to just do it, because I really enjoy it, and the analysing of casting, explaining those sorts of things is a really pleasing thing to do. So you may have reignited a little flame for me that I may explore a little bit further down the line, perhaps sooner than we might think, but I might start look at these things a little bit more. So we might see an offshoot of fly culture and the casting association of fly culture or something like that. Who knows? But the other lovely thing, and this ties in beautifully, the event that we had on recently at Orvis, if any of the listeners were there, you'll know that Luke read a beautiful piece that he wrote about his friend Mark, who we sadly lost recently, that I know resonated with a lot of people. But he also was involved with building rods, and you brought a couple of his rods along, and we cast those. And it was kind of nice when we'd finished looking up and saying, "Nice work, Mark." And they're beautiful rods, aren't they?
They're lovely. They're lovely rods. Yeah. So one's a 10-foot 3-weight. It's a really interesting rod. It's got a lot of power, but it's also got that sort of flexibility from the mid to the tip. It's be happy fishing. I fish nymphs with it, but also be happy on a larger river, maybe like the Usk or the Eden, somewhere like that. Throwing a 4-weight line, just overlining it a little bit, throwing dry flies, absolutely fine. That was really nice. I think you were quite sort of pleased with it when you hadn't casted any of Mark's Taniwha rods before, but the other one was a 10-foot again, but it's a 3-4, and then it had an extension piece in it as well. So it's a 10-foot, but it'd be +1, so it would go up to an 11 as well for nymphing. So again, that one was a little bit lighter. I think the carbon was a bit more, I don't know, technologically advanced. It looked pretty like it was wrapped with. I'm not sure how it was wrapped. Anyway, it was a sort of slightly more advanced carbon, and a little. You could just feel it was that bit lighter, but a lot of power in that rod as well. But again, with that flexibility, so it didn't feel like a very very fast rod. It was nice to fish, comfortable to fish with. So yeah, that will do both dry fly and nymphing. So you got the option with that. But yeah, it was nice to pick those up. And Mark really knew about. He was a great caster, but he knew about rods. He had those rods made up and built. They were made in China, but they were high quality builds. That he sourced. He had a good source out there. He really thought about what he wanted from his rods and his market. I know he had a good little business, which obviously is no longer. But he was a great caster. Born in New Zealand, grew up in New Zealand. Moved to London and studied at university in London, and met his partner here in London, and then he ended up settling down in Salisbury, and that was where I met Mark. And I actually met Mark through Complete Fisher Forum, which I think it's still going. I haven't been on there for years, but there were some great people on there. I'm sure there still are, but I've kind of moved on from forums a little bit. But I met Mark through that, along with sort of at the same time as Malcolm Anderson, and the three of us fished together a lot on the chalk streams, and we sort of grew our fishing friendship from there, and then we became, not only sort of fishing friends, but yeah, just all round friends. We knew each other's families, and so we built a really special relationship. But going fishing with him was always relaxed. He was he just had that laid back Antipodean style, and he was a true gent, always gave you the first shot on a nice bit of the river, of course, I, obligingly gave him the first shot as well. It was a reciprocal relationship, and in terms of the fishing, he was someone I want. You know people that you want to fish with, and you get on with, and you get on with on the water. So, me and Mark had that had a very sort of, there was a lot of give and take. There was a lot of understanding. He sort of understood my family sort of constraints, which some of us have, children and busy lives. So he was always flexible with that. And it was great when we organised a fishing trip, because he'd always be true to his word. He was always reliable, and he was happy to book accommodation and beats, and, he'd always turn up on time, which was good. Because I'd be chomping at the bit and waiting to get up to the Usk or wherever it was. And we had some absolutely brilliant, probably 15 years of fishing together. We had some great trips together. Yeah. So I'm going to miss Mark a hell of a lot. But, he lost his battle with pancreatic cancer. He passed away just before Christmas. And I'm not going to lie, it was really, really tough. Just from a personal perspective, from me, it was tough. It was a tough thing to comprehend. What am I, 48, nearly 49 years old now? And as you get older, you realise that this is the age where you start to really value life. It means an awful lot to me. First and foremost, my family, my two young children. I've got two young girls, who are 7 and 8, and my wife, who I love them all dearly, and I just value every moment and every day with them. And that's the most important thing to me from a fishing perspective. You realise that actually, we are, as fly fishers, we are incredibly lucky to share this passion and to have this life in fishing. I mean, literally, I am bonkers about fishing, fly fishing in general, but fly fishing particularly. And I just feel so lucky and privileged to be able to go out and go to the places and visit the wild places that we see, and to have those experiences, experiencing an amazing hatch on a river, wherever it is, or, wild trout popping everywhere, the atmospherics, maybe it's the sun going down or the sun coming up, or it's just, it's incredibly humbling to be privileged enough to be alive, to be there, to experience it, and to have that, as my passion. So it's when you lose someone who's close to you, particularly someone who you spend a lot of time with, it's a check. It's a check in again, and you're like, okay, what's important? And what's important is right now, this very moment, the time that we spent casting lines on the lawn this morning, or drinking coffee, or talking about, various friends and people we knew, or our plans for this year. We've just got to make the most of every moment, and and being kind. And Mark was super kind as well. He was such a kind person, and I'm just going to miss him tremendously.
And I hope, wherever you visit your first trip, that I'm guessing that you're going to take that rod, you're going to hopefully catch a fish on it, and that'll be a special moment for you. And like you say, this world that we inhabit transcends just the fish, doesn't it? It's about, and with this little podcast, with our little magazine, all of these things that we've tried to say, look, the success of a day isn't necessarily on a fish. Yes, they're wonderful to be able to catch a special fish. And I remember a picture where you'd come to fish my home water with you with this is one of these things, if you're listening, you'll know when you're showing somebody your home water, and I've fished with Luke many, many times over the years, but I'd shown him this place. I told him, we've got some good fish here. And you're thinking, oh dear, please, please. And then he came up and just walked up to me with a hook that was bent out. And he said, yes, I get it now. And so that was a relief. But it does transcend that, doesn't it? And it's like there's so much more to it that I think we're trying to discover. And I'm sure part of that is that age process as we grow a little bit older. The seasons are getting fewer now for us as we get older. So we've got to be wary of that. And I think we're savouring things, do you think, in a different way then as a result of that?
Yeah, definitely. This is a complex subject, but I think, I don't want to sound too cliched here, but you do, as you mature as a person and you mature as an angler, you start to you get different things from fishing. Fishing gives you it gives you respite sometimes from a stressful life or from things that are going on through the sort of rhythms of your life. It could be stress at work, it could be a whole host of things. It could be just busyness of living in a city or a town or whatever you've got going on. Fishing gives you that. It gives you, as you progress, it gives you different things, and you want different things from it as well. There was a time when I first got into fishing where it was just like, right, I'm getting to grips with all the tackle and the casting and the kit and all the rest of it. Then it was like, okay, I'm on to like catching lots of fish. And then, it's kind of like, well, I won't lie. I'm going to be completely honest. I want to catch a big trout. Of course I do. But it's accepting sometimes that conditions aren't exactly right for that. You're not in the right place. And it's actually thinking, well, just calming yourself down and thinking, well, why am I standing here on the riverbank? Who am I with? What are the reasons I've driven 200 miles or wherever to come and stand on this riverbank? Have I just come? How much pressure am I putting myself on myself? And I have been guilty over the years of putting way too much pressure on myself and comparing myself to other anglers, and I'm not a great angler, but I'm a good angler and I can catch fish. I know that. And I now, when I get to the river or I go out on the river, it's about who I'm with. It's about the circumstances. It's the build up. It's the coffee and the breakfast before. It's the relaxed start. It's the stuff that you don't know that's going to happen. The things that might just happen in coincidentally on the way. It's the way the hatch started, or the time of day, or maybe there's an unusual aspect of something unusual that's happened, but it's about how it happens rather than what happens almost. So yeah, I've recently just taken the pressure off, and actually losing Mark recently, I just realized, just go and enjoy it, plan it and enjoy it. And actually, if it's not a great day, look for the good things from it, look for the positives from it, and just enjoy it. And really, I'm almost like talking to myself now. Sorry, Pete, but I'm just trying to tell myself, look, you're lucky to be able to get up and go and spend 2-3 days fishing, or even if it's a day or whatever. I'm lucky to have that opportunity. And Millie, my wife, and my children, they know I'm fishing mad. They're happy for me to go, but again, I don't want to be away from them for too long. I want to be 3-4 days I'm kind of done and I'm kind of missing them. So I want to be home, because that's important. That's just as important to me as fishing, my family life, and all the other things I've got going on. And as much as I love fishing, I'm passionate about it. I've always been a bit self-conscious about becoming this is going to sound mad now, too fishing centric, and one-dimensional. because I'm interested in lots of other things as well. So yeah, it's important for me to keep that balance and keep a check on it and keep a reality. And sometimes, because of my personality, I am unfortunately for my sins quite obsessive about stuff, and I freely can admit that, and so I do get a bit carried away, and I get a bit fixated. Right, I'm going to go there and I'm going to do this and I'm going to catch that fish, and and it's actually like that. Nature doesn't work in that way, and life doesn't work in that way. So you've kind of like, it's a bit like Chris Yates sort of talks about it a lot, doesn't he? In some of his books and his writing, is that you've got to shift down and you've got to just be humble about the experience that you're going to have when you're fishing. And if it happens, it happens. Nature and fishing and the river doesn't owe you. It doesn't owe you anything. You don't owe it anything. All you need to do is sometimes just turn up and just sit down and see what happens, and just let the time unfold without that pressure, And I've been trying to tell myself that, and I think I'm getting there.
I think there's some good points, and that's exactly right. You take what you want from that day. And very interestingly, what you said about being one-dimensional, I kind of get that because I'm so deeply in this that you have to step out. So I deliberately look for different things to interest me or absorb me, so that everything, and I know when I make those Freudian slips, when I should have said shopping and I say fishing, or if I say another word, and it comes into it, and it is good to step away. I'm pleased to be part of it, but also to step away from it is good, because I think you come back fresher as a result of it. But I wanted to move on. We're getting a good understanding of yourself for those that don't know you, but I'd like to move on a little bit and understand where you're based and what that means from a fishing point of view for you.
Okay, so I'm based in North Dorset, very, very close to Stourhead, the National Trust's gardens. I live literally on the doorstep, that kind of area. So the border of North Dorset, Somerset and Wiltshire. So I am about 30 seconds from the top of the River Stour, and there are wild brown trout 30 seconds from, and in fact, every so often on a summer's evening, I'll get an LDO settling on the window of one of my daughter's bedrooms or round on my side of the house. So that's how close I am. I get upwing flies landing quite regularly on the windows of my house. So very, very close to the top of the Stour, 50 minutes away from the main stem of the Hampshire Avon, 20 minutes from the Wylye. Then just north, I've got Fruman District Angling Club, so I've got some fishing there. And then south, obviously you've got some bits on the Stour, so there's Blandford Angling Club and that kind of stuff. So geographically, yeah, I'm within striking distance. And then, of course, my beloved River Brew. Yeah, so the River Brew is not really fished that much. Few people know about it. It's pretty hard to access. It's overgrown, quite an incised channel, but there are wild trout there. And if you know where to go, you can go and catch them. And I've been down there with lots of people. And in fact, Chris Kent, the late Chris Kent, came and fished it with me on several occasions, and I've got some wonderful memories of fishing with Chris. So that's where I'm based. And that's the kind of fishing that's around on my doorstep.
And people will recognise if they look at the Wild Trout Trust auction. I know in the past, Luke has done days on the river there as well, the river that he mentions. So I know they were extremely successful as well. So you've got a lovely mix of water there. But is there one that's you'd consider home water? Where's the one, let's say you've got a couple of hours and it sounds like you've got plenty of fishing pretty close by. Where's the place that you're probably most likely to head to?
I think that's quite difficult. And the honest answer is I don't have a home water, because what's happened over since sort of having children is that my fishing has, I still fish, but I've done a lot of bass lure fishing recently. So I have. It's not that I haven't been fly fishing, but I've done a lot more. I've just got into lure fishing for bass, and which I love, and I've been concentrating on that. I've done a bit of early spring dry fly fishing and nymphing and bits and pieces here and there and everywhere. But at the moment, I don't really have a home water. If I could call it, I guess if anywhere would be home water, it'd probably be the Hampshire Avon, somewhere like that. One of the Tribs, the Wiley, or the main Hampshire Avon. But yeah, but the Brews, it's so much fun. It's completely wild. The trout are fit as a fiddle. It's just good fun fishing, and it's fishing in miniature. There's some decent fish in there as well, and it's just, yeah, it's challenging. There's some overgrown stuff, but you have to sort of switch up your method a little bit. It runs from quite shallow to quite deep. So you kind of have to think about it a little bit. So yeah. Everywhere, I'm just happy to go anywhere, Pete. It doesn't bother me.
I think the fair comments, it's all good.
Yeah, it is all good.
So we know that you like how you like to fish, and I think we're similar in the sense that company's good and taking it in turns to fish a nice bit of water or a pool and cheering on your friend and going from there. So I think we got an understanding of that. But how do you like to fish? Would it be, you've mentioned dry flies, you've mentioned nymphs. Is there a particular way that you like to go fish?
I love dry fly fishing. I'm not going to lie. The dry fly is my preferred method. If the conditions are right for dry flies, I will fish them. I used to do a lot more kind of prospecting, but now I much prefer to take my time and look for rising fish and just slow things down a bit, not be in so much of a rush. But I also have developed a little bit of a penchant for nymph fishing as well. So I really like picking pocket water, interesting runs, deep pots and pools with a nymph. I'm not one for plodding steadily through a run with a nymph. I find that a bit boring. But if you get me onto something like the upper Y or the upper the sort of upper reaches of the Usk, I really like that. Just where you've got to put a couple of mens in, or you've got to fish around a small back eddy or something with a nymph and just dangle it in the right place so it's not getting any drag. I just love seeing that, that sign of a fish, and it's just nice. It feels like it's like the magician's version of magic a rabbit out of a hat, isn't it? It's just brilliant.
And I think listeners are getting a really good understanding of you as a person and your fishing ethos as well. And this ties in beautifully because when I had the fishing school, you did some guiding with us. And like you said, understanding how you fish and how you are as an angler. I'm just interested in people's ability to get on with people and to give them a good day, yet still, of course, understanding to a high level what's expected of a fishing guide, which you did magnificently. Did you enjoy that process?
It was very kind of you, Pete. I mean, I suffered from serious imposter syndrome when you asked me to do it, but there must have been a reason you asked me. And the first few times we sort of had a stock take, didn't we, at the end of the day, and we discussed things. And do you know what? It was a brilliant experience that I will never forget. I so valued the few years that I came down to do a bit of guiding for you. I learned so much about people, about their expectations, about the way to draw them in. And, it's been said, I think, quite a few times before on the podcast, is that, you need to understand what people want from a day's fishing, and you need to sort of read the crowd, almost be able to read your client, and you need to know where they're at, where their abilities, are they, have they cast much before? What do they want from the day? Some people might just want to learn to cast, and they're going to be thankful just to get on the river and get a fish or two. Other people are there. They want to catch fish from the off. They might have some more experience, but it is just trying to find out with them early doors, sitting down, having a coffee, seeing what they want from the day. And it's that customer service bit. It's understanding what they're looking to achieve that day, and dialing into that and being sensitive to that. And it's not, it's guiding is you're basically you're fishing vicariously, and the reward is even more intense than catching a fish yourself. To see someone going from 0 to 10, not knowing anything about casting or fishing, putting them on the river. And you did things that, I think your model was interesting, because you didn't major on all the sort of the technical sort of sides of it. It was more about rivercraft. It was more about the experience, and it was more about making them feel comfortable, getting them on the river. And if we could get them a fish, then it was just the icing on the cake, and the look on their faces, taking them from almost just a curious person who booked a session with you, to getting the fish on the line. I used to send you the photos, and sometimes I even look back I've still got some of them saved on Google Photos somewhere, and the look on their faces, they are literally those the people are just lit up, and they just got so much from it, and it was tremendously rewarding experience, and something that I'll never forget. Yeah.
And the tour's not an easy river to guide on, is it?
No, it's really not. It had its days. I remember taking that a bunch of I think they were solicitors. Do you remember? They were great, but they wanted to catch fish, those guys. And we hit, I had one of the guys, we hit a serious LDO hatch. And it's the biggest, still to this day, the biggest LDO hatch I'd ever seen on the tour. And they were popping, and there were fish everywhere. And literally, I tell you how, it was such a good hatch. I was physically shaking. So I was like, yeah, we need to. This guy needs to get a fish, and he did. He got a fish, but his bless him, his eyesight wasn't the best. He was sort of slightly misjudging, but we got him in the end. We just waded a bit closer. We got him closer, and he got into a couple of fish, and there were nice ones as well, and he was made up. But yeah, that was. But other days it could be cold. There might be a bit of colour in the water for whatever reason. Early on, it's a bit tricky, isn't it? But as you get those as you say, the Granum switch on, and the LDOs, the olives sort of pick up, sort of late spring, it sort of starts to get a bit better. But yeah, it can be tough. But yeah, not always an easy river.
No, I remember that one. Was that the day you were doing with Toby as well?
It was,
yes.
Yeah.
I remember, because I had guests as well, and I was walking along the top.
Yeah.
And Toby looked at me, and I said, "Is it going okay, bud?" And he looked at me and said, "I think he's blind." Because he said, I can't put a bigger fly on for him to see those sorts of things. But it all worked out in the end. And I'm sort of kind of reminded about the Orvis event, and we always talk about with fly culture that it's about community as well, and building communities. And while we've been talking, I've been thinking about, because of course, when you were guiding with us when we were down at the Fox there, that open day. And we used to put this thing together, that it was open day on the river, and we'd just open the doors and anyone could come along. And again, friendships were formed. We'd catch, and the tour takes a long time to warm up. It's a tough river. I think we had one year we caught 20 odd fish, which open day was highly unusual. And I think the rain came in and the river came up 4 foot the next day, and that was supposed to be my first day of guiding that got washed out. But we caught a bunch of fish there. But again, we'd all sit and have breakfast together. I'd organise some sandwiches and things at lunchtime, and then we'd all have a drink afterwards, and there'd be a bunch of people along. We'd share beats, make friends. They were fun as well, weren't they?
They were fun times, and it was. It was early, but there was this sort of excitement, and there still is. And I'll always message you, won't I, on the 15th, and I'll say happy 15th. Fortunately and unfortunately, my daughter was born on the 15th of March, so I can't come anymore. Maybe when she's flown the nest, it might be a bit, and she's off travelling around the world. It might be different, but for the time being, the 15th of March is a bit tricky for me. But we were at the Fox, weren't we? Fox and Hounds, and it was really fun, and met a lot of sort of different characters used to come down. Luke Bannister, I know, was there, and Toby was there, and there were various different faces. But it wasn't really about the fishing, was it? It was about the love of fishing and the anticipation of the season coming. We all knew that we weren't really going to be fishing. We kind of knew we'd go out and stick the waders on and string up a rod, but we didn't think we were going to be into serious numbers of fish. But again, it was just about meeting up and talking about how we all were and what the plans were. And it's just we should do that.
It's a shame it doesn't happen anymore. Yeah, absolutely. And it's got me thinking as well about what we were saying about perhaps when you're older, you look at fishing in a different way. But I was younger then and still looked at fishing. So perhaps there is something different. Perhaps in some ways we look at fishing through a slightly different lens. And it doesn't matter which lens you look through. But I'm kind of coming to the conclusion as I'm reflective of my fishing career that I think I've always been the same. And you've touched on those stages, haven't you? Any fish, a load of fish, big fish, tricky fish, whatever. I don't think I've ever had that. I just take it as it goes, and it's all good. As coming back to what we said earlier from that point of view, and that was part of that. And I think probably that was the very start of, the germ of the idea of where fly culture will come. We had Eat Sleep Fish at the time, and I think we wrote a piece about open day, or I wrote a piece
you did,
with you in it. Yeah, absolutely. So there are those sorts of stories, and I do wonder if we just look at it, it's just something inherent. Everyone takes something from it, which is really good and really, really important. But I don't know how much I'm subscribing to that story of how an angler evolves, although I've heard it many times and I understand how that could fit in with people, but it does make me wonder. But yes, they were fun days, and the bar afterwards, and we'd get the catch board up to date, and that was part of the excitement, wasn't it? I think we had one of the biggest fish of the season on open day one year as well, didn't we?
I can't remember who it was.
It was Mike.
Yes, Mike. Incredible at that time of year on the tour. I think we need to definitely get those back up together, and at least. Well, I think you are, in a way, through fly culture. I think it's keeping, one of the things I've really enjoyed about it is it's keeping people in touch with each other. Stockbridge last week was just lovely to see some people I haven't seen for a long time, to feel that enthusiasm, to hear Don and Peter talking about their book re-released in hard copy. That was fantastic, and it's just it's kind of leading us down a bit of an avenue, isn't it? how do we stay in touch with each other? It seems to be that the trend is now sounds funny saying it, but social media is the way that people are keeping in touch, and it's not the way I keep in touch. I've gone the other way since about 2013 or 14. I came off of Facebook. I don't do Instagram. I'm on a couple of WhatsApp groups, but I find the whole social media thing, it's very misleading, and it's something that it's not that I don't understand it, but I just feel like it's a world where a lot of illusions are created. And I like picking up the phone and giving someone a ring, even writing them an email, just the written, a few words, you can't really communicate much in a message or a snapshot on Twitter or Instagram. People are sort of weaving these sort of worlds. Some of them might, I know why they do it for publicity reasons. In relation to fishing, it's like, how is that changing the fishing experience? Do you need to go down to the river with your phone and be transmitting every little thing that happens? That's interrupting the rhythm of a day for me that could be spent switching off from all of that stuff. And I've even heard recently of people, posting pictures of the same fish from different angles, wearing different caps, all this kind of rubbish, it's pure vanity, and it's, I find it really, really sad, that people are choosing to connect with people on that basis, and snap assumptions and judgments on other people through that as well. It's like, just like, go meet someone, go meet up on the river, or go and have a chat, or go meet someone in a coffee shop, or whatever. This whole online thing is just, it's mad. I'm going back the other way. I'm just like, I'm old school. I really am. I don't know.
I like your style, and I sent a message, funnily enough, to James Gilbraith Boo, who's on the podcast regularly. He does our Christmas address now, and I had noticed he hadn't been on social media for a little bit. Good, and I messaged him yesterday, and I just said, everything all right, bud? Yeah. I've seen that you've not been on your socials. I was just checking in to make sure you were okay. And he said, I'm just having a breather. I'm leaving it alone. And you used the word pressure, and I think often with social media, it does bring on these inherent pressures that people need to portray that every day is perfect, which we've alluded to isn't. And everything doesn't go to plan, and the fish might not be rising, or you lose the fish. It doesn't matter from that point of view. But I can see when people are getting stressed about having not been posting something and just put stuff out for the sake of it. You just don't need to. And as I often say on here, that once I press like, there's a pretty good chance I've forgotten about what you've done 10 seconds later. So don't let it be the everything from your day. And I'm not hanging on the day. And I'm sure many people are like that. It's lovely to say nice one, and I try to when I do that. But I think we're going to see more people doing what you're doing. The people who are running these media companies, only my opinion, of course, I can't necessarily agree with them and how they're operating. So that is making me uncomfortable as well now. So, I've left one of them, and I don't post on it certainly at all. And I can see that being more of a trend. And I'm told younger people are going back to moving away from smartphones as well. Yeah. So we may see this shift away, and perhaps we'll get our parchments and ink pens out and start writing letters to people again. And there's nothing wrong with writing a letter. I enjoy doing those. But I think that's very interesting. So don't I've got to put a note here to remember not to ask you for your social media handles because you haven't got any.
I'll give you my email.
Your email or carrier pigeon name. And we can go from there. But I wanted to also move on to, because you've been involved as a job with river restoration and maintenance, and then you've moved away from that. And I wanted to understand why you've done that and what you're doing now.
Sure. So I moved. I lived in Brighton for a number of years, sort of through my 20s, and then moved back to funnily enough, from Brighton to Bruton. There's a move. Brighton to Bruton, back to the West Country. I grew up in the Salisbury area, but I moved to Bruton, just into South Somerset, near the River Brue, which is kind of how I discovered that. But I was a bit lost, Pete, to be honest with you. I'd sort of had various sort of jobs throughout my 20s, but I was a bit lost, and I was kind of like, I needed to get back in touch with who I was as a person. Sort of lost myself a little bit. And I decided to start working for myself. So someone offered me a job as a trainee tree surgeon. So I got a chainsaw ticket. I was working for a couple of guys who ran a small tree surgery business in the kind of Bruton, sort of Salisbury area, west of Salisbury. And I did that for a few years, got my chainsaw tickets, and then kind of reconnected with fly fishing again in the sort of mid-2000s. Then I got an opportunity to go and work with Simon Kane, Kane Bioengineering. Simon's a fantastic guy, extremely clever, knows a lot about river restoration. He's still going now, doing great work, and worked with him for a while, and then went solo. Just decided to do it myself. So I started off my own business. I got a little white van, bombed around in my little. Do you remember my little Citroen Berlingo? Yeah. Bombed around in that, had my chainsaw in there, and I never went to university. I'm completely self-taught, and I just genned up on river restoration, geomorphology, ecology, freshwater ecology, and just fell in with kind of the Wild Trout Trust. So Andy Thomas, I think, gave me my first break in the game. Went and did a few advisory visits with him and practical stuff, and then kind of got indoctrinated into the Wild Trout Trust gang, and I've always sort of been a part of what they do to a small degree, and generally just sort of built up a number of clients. So I work with a number of chalk stream fishing clubs, the Piscatorial Society, Salisbury District, various other people I worked for over the years, and I just really just self-taught. That was just I just loved rivers. I just loved how they worked. I love the different, the different aspects of river restoration. You need to be, to be the full ticket, to be the full river person. You kind of need to have an understanding of fisheries. You need to have an understanding of ecology. You need to have an understanding of geomorphology. So I kind of just a bit of a jack of all trades, really. So I did that for about 10 years. And did a lot of advisory stuff for Wild Trout Trust. As I said, worked for a few different fishing clubs. But I think towards the end of that, that was about 10 years I did that for. And towards the end of it, it just became really stressful. And I think the reason there was two reasons it became stressful. The one thing was that I had a young family. And the income was very up and down, chasing people to be paid. Some people were still paying me in checks, and it was just like chasing them down, waiting for them to clear. Mortgage, payments coming out here, there, and there. And it just got really stressful, and I was like, do I still want to be doing this with a child in tow and a house? The other thing that happened was, I realised that I suffered with anxiety all my life, through various things which I won't go into because I don't want to turn this into a self-help chat. But I realised that over the years I've suffered with anxiety. That there's long and in-depth reasons for it, but I had to come to terms with this, and I have come to terms with it, and have learned how to live with that over the last 5 or 6 years. And I think it amplified when things weren't going so well. I like to think I'm quite a caring person, and I really cared about what I was doing, but the anxiety was pushing me to extremes about the way I'd analyse, the way I'd deal with situations. And if things went wrong, it put so much pressure on me, and I put so much pressure on myself, and it became uncomfortable and it became untenable. And I was like, do you know what? I'm working really hard and doing a lot of hours, and I was doing okay. I could have kept going, but physically I wasn't getting any younger, and I was like, I can't keep doing this. This is not sustainable. And that was the point where I decided that I needed to do something different. So I looked at the Environment Agency. I took the skills that I had, my knowledge of the local river catchments, the connections that I'd made, and I decided to go and work for the Environment Agency. And I joined the Environment Agency as a fisheries officer, and I think now I've been there 6 years, so it was 2018, round about then, and started as a fisheries officer, and got taken on a part-time contract. Did that for a year, got a few projects delivered, and got my experience, got to know the inner workings of the EA. That takes a little while, and then moved into project program team, delivering river improvement projects, working with NGOs and external partners. I moved into that team sort of 4 years ago now, so 4 or 5 years ago. So very quickly sort of moved departments, and I've been there ever since. So that's kind of what I do. My job is I'll try and condense it down. My job is really to use government funding to get it out to non-governmental organisations and help them as much as I can, steer them with the information that the Environment Agency has. It might be scientific data on aquatic invertebrates. It could be river habitat assessments, all those kinds of things. I'm a kind of a middleman, really, but I try and get that funding to the people that need to spend it. The rivers trusts, wildlife trusts, we work with them. We help them form the business cases. They apply for the money. They go out and deliver the work. So that is the niche that I occupy within the Environment Agency, and we do some great work. We really do. We've removed barriers on the River Tarrant recently, which is a small chalk stream tributary of the Stour. We've removed barriers, fish barriers on the Weir, which is a little tributary of the Wylye. Top of the Wylye runs in at Warminster. We are constantly delivering river catchment projects, working with our partners across the Wessex area. So we've got stuff going on the Bristol Avon. So John Ogbourne's rivers, we've got multiple projects happening there. So we're always looking. So it's not just fish passage. It's working with agriculture as well. So working with farmers and landowners, trying to get them to change their practice and make things more sustainable. It could be things like putting in sustainable urban drainage systems, SUDs. It could be, it could be outreach programs with schools. So if we see an opportunity, we try and get across it, and we try and get money to the people that need to spend it. So I've got a fantastic team at the Environment Agency. They're like family to me. we really support each other, and I'm confident that we are doing some really great work out and about. So yeah, that's kind of sort of how I went from there and to where I am now.
And do you see, we talk about water quality issues, we talk about the environment generally with climate change, all of these. Do you see these challenges, and do you see these challenges continuing to mount that are in some respects out of our control as well?
Yeah. For me, the climate crisis is absolutely here and now. Anyone who's a kind of naysayer who says it's not, I don't know what they're smoking, really, to be honest with you. It's here. It's apparent. The water, in terms of the water quality, it's poor, particularly in the southwest of England. We've got the most dairy production in the whole of the UK in the southwest. It's no wonder that the rivers in the southwest are in a state they are. There are a number of threads to this. The regulation one, we'll pick that up first. The Environment Agency over the years, this is, and I don't think there's any secret to this, has been less focused on regulation. What my understanding now is that they're moving back towards being a regulator and sorting that out. There have been absolutely problems with pollution from water companies, with CSOs, all those things. That is an ongoing problem. My understanding is that is now in the spotlight because of the people that have campaigned against it, people like yourself and others. I think that's brilliant. I think that's really welcome, and we need people like you to come in and say, hang on a minute, you're not doing this, you need to do this. That's important. The water quality problem for me now is from agriculture. That is the biggest single threat that I see to our rivers in this country. 75% of the UK is farmed. Okay, the countryside is farmed. Okay, we've lost 75% of our native species of insects since 1950. Okay, that's across the board. That's not even aquatic insects. That's across the board. We have got huge nature decline in this country. The threat from agriculture is the single biggest threat to our rivers. It's the sediment, it's the phosphate, the nitrate that's attached to that sediment. It's the sediment blinding the gravels, filling up the rivers. It is absolutely devastating to our rivers, particularly in the southwest. The chalk streams, some more affected than others, depending on the catchments. But agriculture is a huge thing. But it's not about bashing farmers and landowners over the head. We can't take that stance. If we took that stance, we wouldn't do anything. We need to have food production. We need to have farming. I'm not saying farming is wrong. I'm not against it. In fact, I work with farmers all the time. I'm involved in the rollout of landscape recovery, which is under the DEFRA ELMS projects at the moment, environmental land management scheme. So it's moving landowners and farmers away from that kind of damaging practice to doing something that produces for them and produces for the environment as well. It's not easy. It's complex. It's complicated. It's fried my brain on more than one occasion. But we need to work together. But we need anyone who campaigns for rivers out there. You need to grasp the nettle. Okay. When are you going to take on the problem that is sediment getting into the rivers? Because that is where the issue is coming from. The planting of maize, the compaction of ground, the way that runs off very, very quickly, farming right next to rivers and streams, particularly on gradients, is having a huge effect on spawning capabilities of salmonids. And I see it everywhere I go, and it's not just here. It's up in Wales. I've seen it. When I've been further up north, but with the rise in the ambient temperature, there's a report I think last week that came out which said that the ambient temperature of rivers is risen, I think 2 degrees at least in the last 100 years, and it's projected to rise several more by the end of the century. What that means for salmonids is it's serious shit. It means that there's going to be a shift. Probably, if you look at the statistics, salmonids are moving further north and west. Literally, if you look at the mapping, those species of grayling, trout, they're actually decreasing in numbers from the southeast in a northwesterly direction. So they're under threat because they just cannot tolerate those high summer temperatures. The high flows in winter are a real problem. So I think what people should understand is that it's not just farming, it's not just agriculture, it's actually that shift in ambient temperature from the climate as well, which is coinciding with that poor water quality. Chuck in barriers, chuck in poor bank management, chuck in those, gross overstocking of trout in rivers, particularly some of the chalk streams. Those wild fish and those wild populations, if you strip out the habitat change, with the climate change and any sediment, the water quality from CSOs, those kinds of things, they're struggling. They're already struggling. They're going to struggle even more. So we have to tackle these things. Some of them, the climate, that's going to be a difficult one, maybe out of our hands, but certainly I'd like to see people grasping the nettle with agriculture. I do know that the Environment Agency has employed hundreds more environmental agricultural officers. They have increased their inspections. There are much more prominent prosecutions happening now. It's probably not happening as quickly as people would want it to, but it is happening, and the shift is in that direction. And I do know that the water companies have had a letter to tell them to pull their socks up, and they will be inspected on a more frequently basis. So look, I don't speak for the Environment Agency, but I work for them, and I am allowed to have a personal. I'm telling myself now, I'm allowed to have a personal opinion, and that opinion is that I think the Environment Agency is it's on the radar. They're going in the right direction. They don't always get it right. There are challenges, but I think we at the end of the day we can't get embroiled in finger pointing and calling people out. We need to try and work out how we can all work together to solve these problems. And sometimes that might involve having uncomfortable conversations and perhaps getting into bed with people that we don't want to be in. But we need to solve these problems together. And I say together, what I mean is humanity, the groups that care for the rivers in this country, the people that live and work around it and have businesses around it. Everybody needs to work together now. The race is on. Yeah.
And what you say there about the water temperature rising resonates. I'm sure it will resonate with many people who listen as well. And I'm thinking about the podcast I did with Ian and Colin, where they said in Scotland, salmon runs were good last year. And they were talking about the old days. Whereas where we are in the southwest, I still haven't caught a salmon for a while.
No.
So I wonder if we're starting to see signs of that, which is alarming. And I'm thinking, if those water temperatures continue to rise, what does that mean for our pastime? does that mean that the saltwater is the place that we start to move to? And we may do in my lifetime, we might start to see those sorts of things. So some of these things that we talk about the tipping point, in some respects, we're past it because I can't see how we're going to reverse it.
It's very difficult. It's very easy to get to wallow in the sort of doom of it all, but we can't afford to do that. You know, as anglers, we are, as Yvonne Chouinard, I think, said, I hope I might be quoting him now, you can't be an angler without being an activist. If you're not an activist, then you clearly you don't care. You know, you have to fight your own corner wherever your little stream or river is. Just even if it's 5 hours a year, whatever, do something positive towards protecting your river. If it's something out of place, you know, bad farming practice, something running into a stream, a CSO discharging, report it. Report it to the Environment Agency hotline. Get it on the map. Get it recorded. Keep doing it. You know, we cannot rest on our laurels, but we also need to protect what we've got. You know, we can't be doom and gloom. You know, we've still got a lot. There's a lot to play for. I think I don't really understand the depth of the problems with salmon returns on the southwest, but my suspicion is there's a lot going on out at sea. There's a lot of overfishing, but there's also a lot of temperature shift in the ocean as well. Prey species are moving further north. A lot of fish are moving further north. That means that the prey species are moving further north, and the fish that predate on them are moving further north as well. There's a lot of unscrupulous netting that goes on at sea. There's still problems with marine stewardship and management, but also within the rivers. If you think, you know, salmon and sea trout rely on those gravels being clear, on there being tiny gaps in between those gravels, so their eggs can be deposited into that gravel into a red, then have clean flowing water through the early winter months and spring months before. The eggs need to be clear of silt and sediment, and they need to be have oxygen that comes dissolved oxygen in the water percolating through that, in order for them to be kept in a stable, viable way, so they emerge as Elvin and Fry in the spring. If you've got a river that's constantly just, you know, fining down, full of sediment, full of phosphate because of bad land practice, and, you know, it's definitely apparent in the southwest. I've driven past some of it on the way down here today, Pete, as we discussed. You know, what chance have those salmon and sea trout and trout got to reproduce? It's just another barrier for them to another thing for them to overcome. We really need to stop that sediment getting into rivers. It's a prime causal factor of the poor success rate of salmonids, I think. So yeah,
we'll keep positive as much as we possibly can. And what you said about, you know, sewage treatment works discharging, Martin Smith, who's going to be back on here soon to talk about some of the cases that he's been involved with in Yorkshire, and also in our little village we have, you know, they've built some more houses. There's a sewage treatment works. I know now who to phone. So even if I see a strange lorry at the treatment works, I'll phone up Southwest Water and say, what's happening there? What's going on? And if we're all able to do this, and I'm sure many people listening are doing this themselves as well, that they're contacting the relevant people, letting them know that somebody's watching what's happening with these situations, then perhaps we're able to, as Lucas said, become activists ourselves as well, and perhaps be able to help with these situations just a little bit. So let's end on a positive.
Yeah, totally.
And we've covered lots of ground. We've spoken well over an hour now, and we've covered lots of ground. We're not going to ask you for your socials. But first off, we're going to ask you for a song for the playlist, which is the dreaded question. But hopefully, as a listener, you have something
I'm prepped.
Prepped for us. Great. Well, what have you got for us?
So this was tough. It was tough. Geez, I love music. I've grown up with music. I've got a massive, broad range of musical tastes. My mum was a musician. She was a poet. She was a songwriter. I've grown up around music. But recently I've been listening to a guy called Jake Xerxes Fussell. And he's got a song called The River St. John's. And so that is my track, is The River St. John's, Jake Xerxes Fussell. And I saw him play in Bristol last year, and I met him. Lovely guy, and he fishes as well.
That sounds fantastic. What a dream combination as well. And musicians and fishing seem to go rather well together as well. And I know somebody mentioned an artist on here. They reached out somehow and he got to meet them as well. So it's fantastic to be able to do that. I should also mention that this podcast being recorded in Fly Culture headquarters. So Luke and I are face to face at the moment chatting, and he's wearing one of my favourite musicians on his t-shirt, Gil Scott Heron. Listen to the Bottle. That's probably his most well-known song, but an activist singer as well, and was absolutely fantastic. So check out Gil Scott Heron as well. So we've got a couple of songs for you from there. Luke, if people want to reach out to you, how do they get hold of you other than carrier pigeon or parchment?
So they can email me at lukekozak@gmail.com. So it's lukekozak@gmail.com. And I'll send them my phone number and they can give me a call for a chat. But that's it.
Fantastic, Luke. Well, thank you so much. I know we've talked about this for so long, and we talked about doing something on the river, and but today's been just one of those cool days that we've done some good stuff, and we'd been sitting, you, I, and Emma had been talking for a while at lunchtime as well, and we said, right, okay, let's get this recorded then. So I'm really thrilled we've been able to do this at long last. So I would like to say a huge thank you for being a guest on the Fly Culture podcast today.
Cheers, Pete. Thanks a lot.
Well, everyone, this has been another episode of the Fly Culture podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this one as much as me. Of course, there's never going to be any charge for these. There'll be some more episodes coming very, very soon. But thank you so much for listening to the Fly Culture podcast.
The Fly Culture podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly published magazine owned and run by fly anglers. When it comes to fly fishing, we've got you covered.